provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, a locally shot movie is released to international acclaim. We interview the writer and director about the mystery and menace of her debut feature film set in Atlantic Beach. Later in the program, a first look at the much-anticipated makeover of Ponte Vedra Concert Hall as it opens its doors this morning. But first, since premiering at the Venice Film Festival last year, Alexandra Simpson's movie No Sleep Till has been winning accolades at film festivals from Marrakesh to Lincoln Center. It has its local premiere here at WJCT Studios on September 30th. Alexandra Simpson joins us now via video from her home in Paris. Alexandra, thanks for being here and congratulations on the film's reception.
Hi, Anne. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm delighted to have you, Alexandra. In its most basic sense, No Sleep Till is a story about fictional residents of Atlantic Beach as they prepare for, or really do nothing to prepare for, an impending hurricane. But this film is really much less about plot than atmospherics. How do you describe the film? How do you talk about it?
Mhm. I think a lot of the atmosphere of the film has to do with my relationship to Atlantic Beach, to Jacksonville. My father's from there, but I've never grown up there. I grew up in France, and we would go there in the summers, always with the idea that the summer would end and we would leave. So I never really felt that I belonged, which sort of created this relationship of nostalgia and fantasy and dream. And I knew I'd want to make my first feature film in Atlantic Beach because it's a place that I'm very close to, yet it's a place that I don't belong to. And I think that those are the sentiments that fueled the tone of the film, which really does take over. And then, of course, there's an anticipation, which is one that is very mundane for local people, on coastal Florida. It's one that's uneventful, and I think that that's the direction I wanted to take, as opposed to going into the tropes of, a disaster movie.
Right. And the film is very impressionistic in the way it's shot. The story is sort of a nonlinear ensemble cast, film with a lot of storylines and not necessarily one central character. And in some ways, not that much happens in terms of, plot, but it is still this really suspenseful and gripping film. And it kind of speaks to what the characters themselves are experiencing, which is this, kind of caught between just a very mundane daily existence and this impending catastrophe.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I think I was very interested in what happens in a moment like this, where your life is sort of ruptured. You're forced to pause. So it is eventful in that it's out of the usual, but there is so much stagnation in a moment like this. And I was really dreaming what happens in these moments, because for some it's an occasion to try something, to maybe to try to leave or to try to connect with someone. And for others it's simply just waiting for the night to go by. And I think that finding the excitement was really just watching these people during the night in the most humane ways. And when I say humane, it's that human behaviors can be unexpected at times. So I think there are unexpected behaviors at times, that do create some sort of, I don't know, excitement maybe amongst this very calm, generally calm atmosphere.
Yeah, I saw a one review of the film, and we should say it's been getting just rave reviews all over the place and in, many national and international publications. But one that
Mhm.
compared it to kind of a duck paddle, because there's sort of this furious action happening underneath the surface, but
Mhm.
this sort of placid overlayer. And while this film is about impending risk in the form of a hurricane, there's also these sort of undercurrents that you have in there about, environmental um, collapse,
Mhm.
or gentrification and the threat that that holds. Can you talk a little bit about, working with those themes into and around this plot point of impending hurricane?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to go back to my very strong desire to make my first film in Atlantic Beach, was really to sort of document these places of my childhood, this sort of like old Florida that's menaced not only by climate change but also, as you said, gentrification. And I think that's it's important, even though we don't dive into it too too much in detail or anything. We really touch upon this subject with the scene of this big house and construction, and I'm seeing these places disappear and being rebuilt in something that is aesthetically sort of homogenous and also charmless in a way. And it's I was really interested in approaching this vulnerability of the place, whether it's, gentrification or climate change, as well as approaching the vulnerability that it sparks within the characters. So there really is a sense of precarity everywhere and in everyone. And I think that that's what ties this sort of collective ensemble in the film, is this sense of precarity.
One of the film, moments that I found really affecting is this construction scene. There's all of these things that are happening as people are, anticipating this storm, and one of them is a guy is kind of checking out a home under construction, and it really does sort of drive home this idea of, building in a place as fragile
Mhm.
and as imperiled as coastal Florida. Um,
Yeah, mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that this translates in the presence of these 2, pool cleaners. They have almost like an absurdist presence. You don't really know what they're doing, who they are. They talk in French and English. It's kind of odd, but I think that it does reflect this sort of confusion in sort of polishing the coastal places, with this knowledge of such fragility and what that creates, and again in people, because it is in everybody's mind that this is a fragile place. Yes, yet it is a place that's continuously being polished.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to Alexandra Simpson. She is the writer and director of No Sleep Till. It's a film shot and set here in Atlantic Beach. The film screens at WJCT Studios in late September on the 30th. And if you have questions for Alexandra or comments about the production, you can reach us at 904-549-2937. You can also email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. I want to talk a little bit about your experience in Atlantic Beach because you sort of mentioned it. I mean, you grew up in France, you summered very frequently in Atlantic Beach, visiting maybe once or twice a year. Has this place always appealed to you as a storyteller? And have you always viewed the place through this cinematic lens? I mean, one of the grand things about this film is just this exceptional cinematography and editing that really is transporting. It's just very beautiful.
Mhm. I really think that what drives me to create something in this place is such strong nostalgia. It really starts with a feeling, and then more so than image, I think I'm so inspired by the sounds that I hear them, because nostalgia is very much linked to sound, at least for me. And there's very specific sounds like a distant thunder, the cicadas, the frogs. All of these really sort of punctuate the film in a way that where the sound becomes as important as the image. They really go hand in hand. And in terms of image, I mean, to me, it's such a different aesthetic than France, and there's so much charm, whether it's in the wilderness and the skies or the neon signs. And I think that my DOP, not being from Florida or from America and coming with such alien eyes, really made us lean into our sort of fascination for places that, we're not used to live with. But we there is definitely a fascination of someone who doesn't belong there.
Yeah, the soundscape is a whole other, element of experiencing this film. And as you say, there's all of these things that are great little moments, a lot of ambient music as well. And,
Mhm.
it's kind of this ever-present tone, sometimes a little more obvious as you're hearing it sort of echoing from across of a house or a parking lot or passing by. But it is a really true experience of Florida. It's like always somebody has the radio on as you're walking
Yes,
by. Often they're
absolutely.
biking by you with their radio on. It is this, universal. And I'm curious about how you chose that music,
Mhm.
what it was meant to evoke.
Yeah, well, I love that you say that because it truly was meant to evoke what you actually do here in the streets. And I'd started editing with a lot of like Bruce Springsteen songs and sort of like modern country as well. And when it comes to licensing the rights, you have to change these big like musicians. You can't keep them. So we worked with my music supervisor Taylor Rowley into recreating what you actually could be hearing in those parts of Florida. And as well, we do take the liberty at times to sort of leave the present moment and sort of lean into the dreaminess with music that's less diegetic. And but it always starts. I feel like when you enter a scene and there's music, it always starts from within, as if these people were actually passing time by listening to music. And you can hear the presence of a neighbor somewhere, whether it's in the motel scene or whatnot. You can hear the people through the music. That's why I love using this echoey effect. It's really to suggest a sort of proximity that you don't experience by actually connecting with someone, but they are there. So it's but definitely inspired by, especially in the summers, just so many people biking by with music and radios, definitely inspired by these sounds.
Yeah. I want to ask you a little bit about shooting in Atlantic Beach, kind of how that went, and also your decision to incorporate basically a local cast, most of them, if not all of them, sort of non-actors or at least, not professional actors at this point. Can you talk a little bit about how you cast this and how quickly you had to shoot it?
Yeah, I was in pre-production for about 2, 3 months before we started shooting. And that meant scouting, auditioning, and I was working with my family, my one of the producers, Jason Simpson, my father, Bob Simpson. They were insanely supportive. And then I met Grace Altmeyer, who ultimately went through all the auditions with me. And it went from street casting to posting a note on Facebook and being like, come to this open call, or just casting someone off of, for example, the young girl Bryn. I met her at the diner at the Grumpy's, and I felt so charmed by her immediately, and I didn't even audition her. We just had coffee, and it was exciting. And I think a lot of meeting these people inspired me for scenes like the BMX professional that you see in the background of one of the night scenes was someone who reached out saying like, oh, if you ever need a BMX professional, here's my demo. And it sparked this idea for this sort of odd creature that comes out in the night. So it was a lot of writing while we were auditioning. And I think, yeah, 3 months after arriving for the pre-production, it was set, the crew was arriving. I mean, half of the crew was arriving from Europe, and we were shooting.
And you mentioned Bryn Hoffbauer. Was she working at the diner when you met her?
Yeah, she was working at the diner, but she's such a curious and open-minded person. And when we simply had coffee, and that was enough for me to see that she could be that person, this sort of vehicle for someone who witnesses their place disappear. And she had this sort of, I don't know, nostalgia in her look that really got to me. And I guess I somehow saw a bit of myself in her. So it was, for most of these people that we casted, it was a very natural process.
That's so interesting. And I mean, for people who watch this film, there's so many familiar locations, and you really kind of work in the visual vernacular of Northeast Florida. People will recognize the Voussoir Bar, the Magic Beach Motel, which is this, neon, um, uh, well, it's just kind of an interesting neon like visual scape down in Volano Beach. But also the former Gate gas station that's in South Ponte Vedra, which is sort of this isolated, interesting visual space. And then the skate park, the Oceanside skate park, the souvenir shop, which I guess you had a personal connection with too, that's right by Pete's Bar.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was really a mix of places of my childhood, like the public swimming pool. That's where I learned how to swim. That skate park, like I would be this person just sort of longing to understand this youth in Florida. And then working with locals, they really brought so much to me. Like the voussoir was an idea from Kevin Hogan, Camp City deputy manager at Atlantic Beach. He was like, you should absolutely check out this bar, and it worked out so well. And the gas station was Grace Saltmeyer, who I mentioned earlier. She was like, "This is my gas station of my childhood. Like, would you be interested?" And we scouted it, and it was very striking aesthetically, and it was a lot of richness that was brought to me by working with local people, which makes sense.
One of the things that you bring, as you said, is kind of outsider eyes, but also this great insider knowledge, and you capture these um, visual references that people who are from here will completely get. There's the kid at the skate park, and even though it's like the middle of the summer and 90 something degrees, is wearing his like stocking cap, his black stocking cap, his beanie, or the
Yeah, yeah.
people who are throwing the pool furniture into the pool because the storm's coming. One thing I loved was the kind of there's always somebody lighting off fireworks, no matter what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and so I think it must have been kind of, I guess, fun to work those in because you know this place, um, and also kind of present it in a way that pointed out to people that are from here.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah. No, it's so fun and so really small memories of my experience in being there. I mean, the fireworks to me, it's such a striking memory. Like the 4th of July along this strip of beaches from Jack's Beach to Atlantic Beach to it's it's such an exciting sight for me. And I don't know, there were so many, yeah, so many ideas that just came from, oh, I don't know what this does narratively, but it speaks of a place and it speaks of my experience of a place that is very much local. So that yeah, I'm glad that it comes across, and I'm very excited for locals to see it and perhaps feel this proximity with that yeah, with my experience.
What about the involvement of locals? I know that there's some local names that people will recognize when they're reading the credits, but I think that
Mhm.
even for your crew, you kind of displaced your dad from his house for a place to stay. Can you talk a little bit about the role that the community played, either in participating in or supporting the production?
Yeah, it was huge. I mean, it started by a Facebook post, and there was I made it into the Atlantic Beach magazine. I think it's monthly or weekly, I forget. But people from Atlantic Beach and even beyond started reaching out, like, if you need a room, if you need a home, if you need this bike, if you need this car. And so there was such an excitement I don't think that it's very common to see a film set in, maybe more in Jacksonville, but not in Atlantic Beach or any of these beaches. So there was really an excitement to get involved, and we really seized that. Like my father was living at our neighbor's place, while my production team from Europe, we were all camping in his house basically. And yeah, we for a film that's super super shoestring budget, if you don't have that support of the community, it's just impossible. They really made it with this support, and that's how it came to life.
We are talking to Alexandra Simpson. She is the writer, director, also the editor and the sound designer of No Sleep Till. It is a film that is set and shot in Atlantic Beach. It is currently playing at film festivals, but is coming to have its premiere here in Jacksonville at WJCT Studios at the end of September. And if you'd like to join our conversation, you can reach out on Facebook, Instagram, or X at FCC On Air. You can call us on air at 904-549-2937, or you can email questions or comments to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. We do have a question from Jane on Facebook, Alexandra. She says, what type of questions about the USA is the film prompting from international viewers? And she adds that she can't wait to see the film in September at WJCT.
Mhm. I've only had I've had mostly questions about what is it like to wait for a hurricane, in Florida, because it is so, I mean, people know about this phenomenon. Even to Europe, all the way to Europe, they know about it. And then on more detailed stuff, like for example, I've been asked, why are there so many screens in your film? Like what is that? And that's something that's not true of France, of most of Europe, is that you don't have as many like TV screens in bars, in people's homes. So like it goes from the most detailed to more I guess, more existential questions.
Yeah, the television screen is also kind of one of these themes throughout the film. A lot of people are watching, weather, but a lot of people
Yeah,
are just watching, Jaguars games and they're watching, regular television, and it is kind of in all of these scenes. It's a theme where people are kind of tuned in
yeah.
to something.
Yeah, and when you anticipate a storm, the only reality, the only thing that makes it concrete is the news. So
Mm.
it's gonna be turned on every bar, on every radio, and that sort of links everyone in this moment of anticipation.
So we talked about the fact that this is not a super linear film, but the stories are all kind of, if not interdependent, they all kind of help flesh out the experience of this place and these people. And two of the characters are these friends, longtime friends, who decide to use this storm as an excuse head out of town and to go try their luck in Philly. They're stand-up comics or kind of amateur comics. Um, and I wanna, if we can, just play an exchange here. This is a soundbite from one of the characters named Mike in the film. He's played by Xavier Brown Sanders, who's a local. Let's just take a listen.
You know what's weird? Knew this was gonna happen. Like, I hoped for it. For something. Like an excuse to do something. And I'm excited we're doing something.
So in that scene, they're camping out in his friend's car. The storm is moving in, but it's almost like in the narrative of these two that it takes this like potential catastrophe to almost break through the malaise of their life.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about the friendship that these two share and how this storm kind of changes that relationship in some ways?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've from before, so it was 2 things. It was I wanna make a film in this place, and I've been so touched by a sense of doom, especially when it comes to youth. I mean, anything like, when I watch Gus Van Sant's films, or there was on This American Life, there was this episode of teens going to prom, and while they were in prom, their whole town got, like, completely wrecked, and they came out to just a changed world. Just that loss of innocence is something that I knew I wanted to work with. And for these two friends, you really feel like they're lifetime friends, that they know how to talk to each other, they know what gets them. But you also feel it's like that point of age where you're starting to choose your friends, and sometimes what really keeps you together are just memories, or memories of the past. And very subtly, I think we tried to show that they're coming to this moment where they're realizing that their friendship is sort of coming to an end. And I was extremely inspired by a film called Old Joy, directed by Kelly Reichardt, because it's so subtly approached. You don't need to know their past or their future. It's just very present in the delicate, like, the how fragile they say the things that they say when it's serious, including this sort of monologue. It's such awkwardly delivered monologue, because it is hard to be honest in these moments. And I think that they're both understanding that they're falling apart.
That's interesting because I mean, the film's ending is sort of ambiguous, and I was curious whether you felt that their relationship was growing stronger or less so by the film's end, and it sounds like you think it really is heading towards an ending of kinds.
I think it's a realization of we we're turning into two different people. Our experiences are different. There is a sort of codependency, but at the same time, I think that they're realizing that, or at least for Jordan's character who plays Will, I think that he's realizing that there's a sort of how do you say it? He's a little out of place in this relationship. And I think that these moment of honesty is a sign of strength. But ultimately, yes, I feel like I was talking about precarity earlier. I think I was exploring the precarity in this friendship.
I do want to ask you because I'm sure you get questions about it, and you and I spoke about it previously, which is just the title of this film. It is not inspired by the Beastie Boys song "No Sleep Till Brooklyn." Can you tell us a little bit about what this title means?
Yeah, I didn't know this song until people were like, "Oh yeah, no Sleep Till Brooklyn." I was like, "What is that?" It's I made a short film when I was in film school, much more experimental. It was all with archival footage. And it was people waiting, very similarly to this feature film. People waiting, you understand there's a storm outside, and you don't really know what they're waiting for, but you know that they're all waiting for the same thing. And there's a sort of burst at the end, and they all go dancing. And the radio that plays at the beginning of this film is a radio that's called No Sleep Till. So I'd call the short No Sleep Till. When it came to finding a title for this film, my producer Tyler Taramina was like, "This is perfectly accurate. Just use that title." And I think he's right. I think it is accurate because there really is a relationship to sleep and the lack of sleep and what happens in the lack of sleep, and then eventually you do perhaps see someone fall asleep in this car in the just after the scene that you played. I think it's a great title. And I like that it's this sort of suspenseful title when the film is actually not really leaning into suspense.
It is, we should say most of this happens overnight. Most of the film, it must have been quite a challenge to just be shooting in the darkness throughout
Yeah.
so much of the film. But I was talking to my executive producer who watched a screener of this as well. We were talking about how I got every shot looks almost like a photograph. Like it's set up in such a kind of beautifully balanced way, but also it kind of reminded of photos by the artist William Eggleston, who kind of has these
Mhm.
really old timey in a way. They kind of capture that same look that your film does in some ways at this sort of bygone era, I guess.
Mhm, mhm.
How did you like think about the shots that and I guess a shout out too to your cinematographer for
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's great. He was very mad at me for most of the time because he was like, "Well, how do you expect to get, like, image with when there's no light?" But we really did rely a lot on natural light from locations, including, for example, for the motel scene. And I think that when you don't have a lot of means, at least for me, it was extremely important to have a very thought through composition because it's easy for film to feel and look cheap if you have zero means behind. So I think we were very attentive to putting all of our efforts in showing up, and we my references, I mean, I've been yeah, a lot of people has talked about William Eggleston, but our references were really cinematographic. I mean, we were watching films together. We were going back to certain scenes, and I would be like, for example, there's a scene in a film called Nénette et Bonnie by Claire Denis, French film. There's a scene where this guy is just sort of lost in the mall, and you feel he's very close, though he's actually super far away in distance because everything around him is sort of blurred. And I showed this to my DP. I was like, "Okay, how do we get this?" He was like, "Oh, easy, use this lens." So it was really, we talked, we came up with these shots by watching films and by referencing films.
So this film, as we said, is it's going to have its like local premiere here on September 30th, and it's my understanding that you're going to do a short Q&A with the audience after it screens. But I know that you said you're excited to have it kind of finally play in the place that it was made.
Yeah, I mean, I want the people who are the most concerned to see it. It's been 2 years of showing it around, and I've had actually Floridian people come up to me and tell me, "Wow, this really hits home." But I'm the most excited to show it to to who it's the most relevant to, you know? I'm also a little scared, but I it's gonna be full circle, and it's gonna be exactly 2 years after we started the shoot.
Well, Alexandra Simpson, thank you so much for doing this morning. We appreciate it. Congratulations on the film. As we mentioned, it screens at WJCT Studios on September 30th at 7 p.m. And you can find more info at wjct.org/film. Alexandra, thank you again so much.
Thanks so much, Anne.
All right, up next, a local music mecca gets a facelift. Hey, Diana, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Anne. Thank you so much for having me.
So, this is exciting. This whole week is exciting for you, I'm sure. Start by telling us kind of why the need for the renovation in the first place.
Certainly. We found that post pandemic, we really had the need to expand the facility. It really needed some outdoor spaces, some outdoor gathering spaces. It needed an expanded capacity. We read all of our Google reviews, positive and negative, and we really said, hey, let's take the time to renovate and reimagine what this Ponte Vedra Concert Hall can really do
Yeah.
in terms of live music experiences.
And so the concept was to somewhat enlarge, to make the space a little bit more welcoming, accessible. Tell us a little bit about how that took shape and what what changes people that have been there before will notice.
Well, immediately you'll notice a huge increase in capacity. We went from 10,000 square feet to 25,000 square feet. So our capacity is now 615 seated, 1,100 standing, which again is a over 25% capacity increase. You'll notice that we now have an elevator. We have a second floor balcony with a house left, a house right seating, and stadium seating. Those are some of the biggest noticeable differences that you can see when you walk in. You'll also notice that we have an upstairs and downstairs outdoor terrace now, which allows for that gathering space that we identified as needed during the pandemic.
How fun. Okay, so you'll be able to, I know that there was like a little, patio space that had been developed, but this is going to be two-tiered outdoor kind of balcony spaces to just to hang out.
Just to hang out. Yes, we again, another aspect to it was people were tired of waiting in lines for drinks or food, so we increased the number of concessions. So we went from so we now have 2 on the top floor and 2 on the bottom floor, and then we've enhanced our food and beverage offerings altogether. So with partnership with St. Augustine Distillery, we've incorporated some brand new, very exciting cocktails, and then we brought on a classically trained chef to oversee our food offerings. And I'm very excited because it's locally sourced, seasonally curated menu that you would not expect at a concert hall.
Oh,
But it really stemmed from, we noticed that in a lot of these reviews, people wanted more space. They're making an investment in a live music experience. We understand it's not, your tickets aren't $10 anymore.
Yeah, right.
So, and it's a night out. You're going out to dinner, you're getting a babysitter, all kinds of things. So we really wanted to make this experience, this night out, unparalleled, truly an exceptional experience for both the fan and the artist. So backstage, artists will notice all new green rooms for them.
I was wondering about that. Yeah.
Yes.
So first of all, what brings an artist to Ponte Vedra Concert Hall? I'm curious also what brings an audience. I mean, you talk about a fuller experience, and I'm guessing part of that need that an audience member has is driven by the fact that it is a little bit out of the way.
Mhm.
It's not,
Mhm.
Downtown, either St. Augustine or Jacksonville. And so it is a destination in some ways that maybe other venues, don't need that full experience.
And we realize that it is an investment in time to make the trip to come to the venue, but we want to make it absolutely worth the while, both again for the fan and the artist. For the artist, they know that when they arrive, they can relax. It's imperative to us that we read their riders, that we meet all of their needs, because they've been traveling. Maybe they're a little uncomfortable. Maybe they're cranky because you've been on the road. We want them to come to the concert hall and relax, have comfortable seating, know that we have washer and dryer and showers on site for them. If they need, they forgot their toothbrush or something like that, we want to be as hospitable as possible, and that really adds to their when they look forward to coming back. And many of them do come back year after year after year. Marty Stewart is somebody that we've had a number of times, and we're thrilled to have him every time because he knows when he comes to the concert hall, he can relax. He knows that all of his needs are met and that his show is going to be exceptional because we went through every aspect of what his show requires to put on an exceptional show.
One thing that's cool about this venue is this in the stadium seating and then the upstairs seating that you've described. It, sometimes there's this balance you have to strike between, is it going to be a standing show? Is it going to be a seated show? Sometimes you'll hear complaints from people that they wanted a place to sit, but it's a standing show. Now, you've said that that's a call that the artist makes, not necessarily one that the venue makes, but this kind of gives you that flexibility to have both.
Absolutely. If a standing show, if you have somebody that says, yes, I want my audience on their feet. I want them having a great time. But we know that some of their fans might be in a different mobility, might also have different preferences for their show experience. Yes, they can choose to sit in our brand new stadium seating. We have 215 seats as part of that stadium seating with tiered seating, so there is no obstructed view. And then you do have balconies on the left and right side. Again, single file, so there's no obstructed view there either. And you can't get closer to the stage than in those balcony seats. It really is a treat to sit in them.
That's so cool. And so this is a venue that has been around. It started as a Baptist church back in the 80s, but the county's had it now since like 2006 or something.
2000, yes, you're right.
And so this is a big revisioning of it. You're going to have a grand reopening with the guy who's actually the voice behind Man of Constant Sorrow and the Oh Brother Where Art Thou
Yes, Dan
soundtrack, which I
Tyminski.
thought was kind of, I didn't realize that was, but he's a big bluegrass artist
Yes.
and very popular, toured a lot with Alison Krauss back in the day. And so how was he chosen? How did he become the opening night artist?
Absolutely. He's actually, we have grown to our programming director and chief of programming and our CEO president have become friends with his management. And they knew that Dan is one of the most relaxed artists. So maybe not everything is perfect opening night. That
I'm sure it will be.
Yes, it's going to be fantastic. But we know that he will go easy and he will say, I understand. We're still going to have a great show.
Yeah. Roll with the punches.
Roll with the punches. But we love him. We love his show. We know that he has deep roots. He is an exceptional multi-Grammy award-winning bluegrass artist. So you may not know the name, but you definitely know the songs.
Yeah. And this venue has seen so many great concerts come through. I mean, Trampled by Turtles, Ani DeFranco, Neutral Milk Hotel. I mean, there's been so many. And, I guess we look at someone like you who gets to attend these shows and think like, wow, what a great job. I feel like I see you at these, awesome concerts, but you're always running around doing something. I mean, you're a very busy person. And so it's not just like getting to hang out, and watch the shows.
Right. Yeah, it's not, but it's part of the excitement. And there's a huge team behind this. I mean, behind every show you've got anywhere, you've got 30 to 100 extra people on site for those shows between Ponte Vedra Concert Hall and the St. Augustine Amphitheater. Puts a lot to put on a show. But I will say I have to give the biggest accolades to Jerry Wilson, who has been the driving force behind this renovation, who has been there every single day in the morning, making sure that our renovation is on task and that we're going to meet that August 1st opening night.
And that's the Friends of the Concert Hall group. Is that right?
Yes. So the Friends of the Ponte Vedra Concert Hall actually became the driving force behind the whole idea of a second floor balcony. They launched a balcony campaign in 2020 and we said, we're going to have balcony seats. And lo and behold, we've expanded the facility almost 27% now, and much to the energy and the enthusiasm and the strategy of Jerry Wilson.
Yeah, because it really required that partnership in addition to some of the funding that came from the county level. Is that right?
Yes, we call it a four-legged stool, really. It's a partnership between, it's a public-private partnership with St. Johns County and SJC Cultural Events, Inc., and SJC Administration. And then you have Friends of the Ponte Vedra Concert Hall that rounds out that four-legged stool. We all work in coordination to impact live music and cultural events in St. Johns County.
Okay.
But Friends of the Ponte Vedra Concert Hall really started this whole campaign with saying, why don't we have a balcony?
Yeah.
We should have a balcony. We've got a second floor. We just never opened it up.
Right. And so how much did this renovation overall end up costing?
It was $12.9 million.
Okay.
So you have construction costs, you have a complete renovation of the building. We did a surgical demolition to bring the building to its bare bones, but we wanted to keep its authenticity, and then have our architect, Mike Copenhafer, who's a local architect here, come in with his vision. And then we had the contractors come in, and then we had sound, we had acoustical treatments, acoustical designs. We spent nearly $1 million in sound and lighting equipment.
Oh, wow.
So you're going to see an exceptional show. We're only one of 3 in the United States that carries the sound package that we have. It's L Acoustics. And I can't tell you how excited our production team is. They have been playing with this amazing equipment for the past 2 weeks since they've been installed. So when someone comes to see a show, when we talk about the investment in time, because it's not in downtown Jacksonville, it's not in this, downtown St. Augustine, it's an investment in time to make it out to Ponte Vedra. but it's absolutely worth it because you're going to see not only an amazing performance, but sound and lights wise, it's unparalleled. It's truly unparalleled experience.
And so, first show, but you're also starting to book out even into next year. I saw
Yes.
that like Judy Collins is booked for the early part of 2026. How quickly do those slots fill up? And kind of when do you think that schedule will be more fleshed out?
Yes. So right now we have 40 bands booked.
Wow.
And then our aim is to have 180 shows a year. So that's that's quite a lot. So, but we know that we can do it. We know that we've got the facility for it, and there's been a lot of interest from artists who have played previous that are excited to come back to that venue. But also, we have a bigger stage now, so we can have larger bands, maybe with bigger ensembles now, which is very exciting. So you're going to see more new artists come. But a lot of those artists that, it's a beloved venue for them to come and play, and we're excited to welcome them back. But someone who's coming is Leslie Jones, an SNL alum.
Oh, wow. That'll be
incredibly
so fun.
excited. Lyle Lovett, Melissa Etheridge, Mountain Goats are coming back. Ben Folds is playing. It's just a big, wonderful lineup, and our chief programming officer, Carrie Baker, does an amazing job of booking that venue.
Boy, is she going to be busy.
She is going to be busy. She and her team are constantly booking shows.
Yeah. Well, Diana Markovitz, she's the Director of Public Relations and Partnerships at St. Johns County Cultural Events. Thank you so much for being here, and just good luck with the venue.
Thank you so much.
All right. We'll be back in just a minute.
I'm Scott Tong. A young Jewish woman from Harvard says she was a victim of an anti-Semitic act and that Harvard's response was insufficient. But she also worries the Trump administration is hurting Harvard in her name. Next time, Here and Now.
Today at 2 on WJCT News 89.9.
If the 20th century was the American century, many say the 21st century may belong to China. But what if China's rise to dominance has been fueled by one specific U.S. company?
How did they go from such poverty 50 years ago into the world's greatest maker of military weaponry and advanced electronics? Year in, year out, Apple taught them.
That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11, here on WJCT News 89.9.
From AI in the classroom to concerns over funding and safety, teachers are under pressure. And now the Trump administration is pushing to dismantle the Department of Education. What's it like preparing for a new school year when the rules and resources keep changing? We hear from educators across the country next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. One of the final planetarium shows at the Museum of Science and History is also a tribute to the dramatic advancements in space exploration. Here to tell us about it is our resident spaceman, Eddie Whistler, director of the Brian Gooding Planetarium. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
How's Eddie?
So good.
Good. And you're hanging in there in the heat?
I am hanging in there in the heat. I was telling you, I'm comfortable in the heat.
Yeah, got a
Yeah.
lizard mentality.
Yeah, that's what it is. You just have to shift your mind in that way.
You do, and embrace it.
But if I'm not ready for it, even a thin sheen of sweat, and all of a sudden that facade just falls apart.
The cool thing is, inside the planetarium, it is always dark and cool, right? It is a very
It's the
good
chilliest
space.
room in
Yeah.
the whole museum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, saying goodbye to this space is going to be a bittersweet experience, I am sure.
Both bittersweet. Yeah.
Yeah, and so these final performances, there's shows right up until the end, as you said, but this is going to be the last Planetarium Night Live.
It'll be the last Planetarium Night Live, which is a series that we've been doing for years, and I'm always coming on here talking about like what our next program is going to be about, which is about 3 years of James Webb Space Telescope. And then we see the rest of August out. I should mention that there's also an admission-free day on August 9th, which is
Woohoo.
the day after the August 8th Planetarium Night Live in the evening. And it's an admission-free day on the 9th, so listeners should check that out if they're interested in coming and joining. It's going to be crazy crowded and lots of people, but we're also going to turn on a bunch of activation, and so it'll be fun, something to think about.
So this edition of Planetarium Night Live is going to be talking about kind of the triumph of the James Webb Space Telescope, but you're also going to be kind of tracing how we got here. Tell us just why that is such a celebrated piece of technology.
So it's been 3 years, and in so many ways the astronomers are just now learning how to use it and don't feel like they have it. You know what you're getting, and designers have engineered this thing that they understand all the systems, everything is well calibrated, but it's like any new awesome thing that you're prepared for. Imagine a computer program. The more that you dig into it, the more that you know its little issues and its little bugs, and you can work around it. Sometimes things work better than you had ever thought, which in the case of James Webb is the case. And you just get to know it because it has its own little personality with all its little characteristics. And so you listen to these folks who are piloting the spacecraft, and they just tell you that we're just now really starting to sink our teeth into being able to utilize it better. And new programs are taking advantage of some of the things that they understand the best. And it's just crazy. It's a back and forth with the machine and the humans that are running it.
And
So
for people who don't know, I mean, what is it that made this sort of superior to its predecessor, the Hubble telescope? What is it about either clarity or the way that it's able to see into the universe that makes it so special?
yeah, so one thing is just resolution. It's got a bigger primary mirror and can collect more light. So there's just a bigger light bucket to collect from. But the other thing is that it's also different from Hubble in that it is this big thing that looks in a part of the spectrum of light that Hubble can't see into, and is super important for being able to see deep into space, and that's the infrared. So it looks in the infrared, which Hubble kind of moves into the infrared a little bit, but this really specializes in that. And so for reasons, you need the infrared in order to study really deep space. And this is what James Webb was really designed to do, was look out really far, which means look back into time.
Yeah, talk about that, because that's the thing that's so bananas is when you talk about looking into deep space, you're actually talking about kind of peering into the past.
Of course, the sun is 8 light minutes away. So we see light that illuminates our sky that's 8 minutes old. So anytime you look out, you're looking into the past, and James Webb can look deeper into the past. And so we can study how the universe was early on. We don't see big mature galaxies like we just see major differences. And the further you look back, the earlier you see the universe, and you can check it out as a toddler.
I mean, the cool thing about the Planetarium Night Live is, we're talking about it, but you get to see the beautiful pictures in this extraordinary setting. And this final edition of that is August 8th.
August 8th in the evening after the museum closes. Last time we did James Webb last summer, it sold out. So if you're at all interested, and with us closing and people knowing that we're winding down towards the end of what's available, then I just imagine that we're going to sell out this program. So if you're at all interested, come and join us and get your tickets ahead of
A
time.
lot of nostalgia visitors. Eddie Whistler, Planetarium Director, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks for the applause. And thank you for listening. That's our program. If you have comments or questions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight or find our entire archive on your favorite podcast platform and at WJCT.org. The executive producer of First Coast Connect is David Luckin. Our show is produced by
Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. The Covering Florida Navigator Program, providing confidential assistance with health insurance enrollment through the health insurance marketplace. Individuals and families are assisted with finding coverage at 877-813-9115 or at coveringflorida.org.